Hello and welcome back to the VictoriousWool podcast. I'm Victoria. This is episode 49. It is April 14th, so we're in the middle of spring now, and the weather is back to being less volatile, a little less cold, but still getting 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the afternoon some days, so it's nice. I am still wearing sweaters, obviously wearing one right now, and I was cold yesterday. The back of my neck was cold when I was at the library, and I thought I really ought to either I should bring a little kerchief or something. I'm like, do I even have any of those? Like, do I have like a little neck pieces? I do have the Fruition Infinity cowl that I could start wearing. I have a couple of those actually. I knit another one last year. And then I have my Meet Cute cowl, but I don't really have that many other small neck pieces. So I was thinking about maybe designing one. It's just ideas at this point. Of course, I will share anything I come up with you. I'm always happy to share. No keeping no secrets on my YouTube channel. Anyways, yeah, I'm happy to have some opportunity to wear knits still. And I assume that will be the case for many months to come. Okay, I'm fiddling around down here because I am untucking the toes from all these pairs of socks I blocked. But the funny thing that I really need to be doing is actually turning them back right side out. So I'm putzing around inefficiently here. Okay. So earlier this week, I blocked 4 pairs of socks. I think last time I don't think I had actually finished all of these last time. I've done a lot in the last 2 weeks. I had a week off from market, so I didn't go to market, and I decided to spend like a week and not watch any television and try to just get a bunch of stuff done on my list. Read more books. It worked really well, with the consequence being that I've just felt like this has been the longest week ever because I was home every day working all daylight hours and not really doing anything different. So it just feels like this has been a week that's really twice as long as it normally is. I keep thinking, is it Friday yet? Because I don't know, it's still Wednesday. So that means that I finished a lot of things, including socks. And I got all these socks blocked. So I've been knitting Knitter's Academia, this striped pattern of mine, since August of last year to get the first sample ready for pictures, and then I just kept casting them on. So now I have 5 pairs. I'm just going to show you the last 3 pairs because they're the ones accessible right now. But I knit a blue and orange pair. I knit a red and navy pair, I think. I don't know where those are. And then I cast in a Christmas pair. Here they are. I've shown them a couple times on the podcast. I just finally blocked them. That's what's different about it. I blocked them. So they're just more relaxed and softer. Yeah, this yarn blooms really nicely. So it's definitely worth blocking. And I didn't put them on a sock blocker. I hardly even laid them out nicely. I kind of just threw them on the mats and then just made sure that I didn't like really press really hard on the edge, so that I didn't get a super intense crease, although they are still creased. But socks kind of uncrease when you wear them. So anyway, Christmas pair. Then I had cast on the gray and black striped pair. Finished these. I'm not sure if these were finished last podcast episode, but I think I still had one left. These ones are classic and lovely, and I started this pattern out in a black and white before I switched to the blue and orange, so this is sort of like I needed to make a very classic pair to really get back to what I had started with, the idea that I had started with. Then I did a subtle lavender and yellow, which I really, really like. These are lovely. These I definitely both finished. I think I'd only had one cast on last time I recorded, so I knit like crazy every day, and got both of these done. It's already faded into a mem. You know, when you knit like really quickly, or like you do a lot and then you sort of forget about it. Anyway, very cute. And then I had one of these, I think it was this blue. I had one of these started, maybe like the leg of this one. And so then I finished this. This is the Afterthought heel. It's beautiful. And then I did the foot and the toe. And then immediately cast on, like right away, like put that one down and picked this one back up. Cast on. I cast on the next one with the other, switching the contrasting and main colors, which was really, really fun. Actually, I have not tried these on, so hold on a sec. Colorwork socks tend to be a little tight. So most people, I just talked to someone else about this too, is that they struggle to get gauge because they just knit too tight. So I don't recommend going up a needle size because socks need to be durable. The stitches need to be really close together. I would recommend choosing a pattern that had lots of sizes, so you can just go up in pattern size as opposed to knit size. So these are for my mom. Just asked her if she wanted them for Mother's Day early, and she said no. So they're just gonna sit around until Mother's Day. They look good. Hello. We have the same size feet, so she's probably a little wider than me now, but we're the same size, so it's easy for me to knit socks for her. I probably wouldn't knit her she probably wouldn't have received quite so many pairs of socks if she wasn't the same size as me, because if I knit a pair of socks and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'll really wear this pair, I just give them to her. She's like 10 pairs or something. I'm gonna put the other one on too. They are still a little snug, but I can definitely get them on. And they're very firm, which is nice. I think they'll be really durable. My mom's also really hard on her socks. She definitely has busted holes in a lot of what I've given her. She wears them all the time. So I'm glad that I went up and cast on the size 80 stitches when I normally do like a 64 or a 72. So I definitely went up, and I did cast this on maybe even a couple years ago, and it was way too small. So me doing them this year was going back and trying a different size, which was successful, obviously, as you just saw. So I want to try on one of each of these, because I haven't tried on these either. You know, when you just like finish a project and you're kind of mentally just like, okay, on to something else, and then don't necessarily try it on, especially if it's a sock, and especially if you knit 5 pairs of them. It doesn't really matter so much because I know they're going to fit me. There it is. They're cute. I do really like this color combination. And it's interesting to try on these different socks back to back, because my pattern is a more relaxed fit than that colorwork sock, which is very, very snug. These are fun. And the Christmas pair, it will be fun to pull these out during Christmas. I had planned to release the pattern like right around Christmas, or like 2 weeks before or something, and I was going to have a Christmas pair made up. Things just never go in the timeline that I want them to, so it did not happen. Very Grinch till Christmas. That's the color inspiration. Okay, here you go. Those are my socks. I went from having to knit. I went from having to kneading. I went from kneading to knit 5 socks to having 1. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I've had so many socks on needles for so many months. I said I started knitting this pattern in August last year, and that means that I knit 5 pairs or 10 socks in 8 months. And so I was like, oh my goodness. It's a lot of socks for me. Some people knit socks constantly, but it was a lot of socks for me, and a lot of the same pattern. And I'm like, I need a break. I am not going to knit socks for a while, so I just have memories of just being like, I gotta knit the leg, I gotta knit the heel next, I gotta do the foot, blah. Just never ending. Finishing all these means that I officially have only 1 project. Shocking. It is shocking. I have only been here once before. No, twice before. I'm going to count the time that I started knitting. I only had 1 project when I started knitting, which I'm going to show you today because I thought about it and I knew exactly where it was in my closet, and so I pulled it out, my very first project. But we got to wait for that. Back to the fact that I only have 1 right now. I've had 1 recently in January. I was working on the Halibut by Caitlin Hunter, which is that fish colorwork sweater, which is beautiful. And that was the only one at that time. And then I cast on 3 top-down raglans, and I cast on 3 more pairs of socks. 2 of the raglans are done, all the socks are done, and so now I'm just left with the Gentle Lopi. And it's sitting in this linen bag because I already have a sleeve done, and so part of the body and part of the sleeve are tucked in here so that I could pick up sleeve number 2. And when you knit a sleeve, you're like constantly moving your stitches in this tiny little spiral, and you're having to flip your sweater body and your sweater sleeve if you've done one already. Like you're flipping it over all the time. So you're just having to like move the fabric because it's sort of, the body is sort of getting twisted as you're spiraling the sleeve. And so you do have to flip the material over, and it's much easier for me if I bag it all up in here. It's sort of half in because the sleeve doesn't have a lot of distance from the body yet. Once it's a little longer, I'll be able to choke up a little bit more, and I can just flip the bag. Like every row I flip the bag. To show you how much I've done. So this is a tunic by Melody Hoffmann called Gentle Lopi, and I'm using 2 strands of Plotulopi, which is the unspun itchy Lopi. When people are like, is it itchy? And I'm like, yep, it is. You get used to it, or you can. Not everybody can, but I feel like I always have to say that. It's not for everybody, but I do love it. I know Melody loves it too. This is such a fun sweater to make. It's so big. The yoke took like twice as long as I think a yoke normally would. On Melody, it's like almost at her waist, it looks like, in the photos. I could have made mine longer because I have a longer torso. I probably could have added a couple inches. I usually add 2 inches to every sweater I knit, either in the body or some maybe in the yoke, like right after like this one, when the motif ends here and the raglan increase, I added like an inch here. But I decided it's long enough. It doesn't need to be like huge, and it'll be a little easier for my arm movement if the armhole isn't like down here. So when I put it on, it looks kind of like a normal sweater. But it won't be because the sleeves are ginormous and the body's going to be super long. I have 7 plates that I bought for this project. I also have another 7 in this color that I got for a different project that I could crack into if I need more. So I have plenty of yarn, which is always so delightful for me to buy Lopi because it's inexpensive. I buy in big quantities, usually from Iceland, and it comes in a big box. Or it comes in a little box and they like cram like dozens and dozens of skeins and plates in there, and I open it up and they like pop out. Anyway, I just love buying large quantities of wool. It's just really exciting. It's nice that I have so much of this so I can decide how long I really want it to be. Because I have really long legs as well as a long torso. So if I'm going to make it tunic length and it's like going to hit the back of my knees, it's going to be a lot of yarn. So start sleeve 2. Sleeve 1, I'll show you where I worked to. So right here with this orange one, this is where the pattern said sleeve was done. And I was like, yeah, probably not. So I tried it on. And then I was like, oh, I need like 6 more inches before I even start the ribbing. So what happened? And I think it's a combination of 3 things. I think that, like I said, the yoke wasn't as deep on me as it was on her. So that means my rows are shorter, probably. And obviously my torso is longer. So that made the sleeve length hit me shorter. And also my arms are super long. I usually add like 5 inches of sleeve to a lot of patterns. Like 5 inches is a lot. I have like really proportionate arms to my body. So my arm span is 6 feet and I'm 6 feet tall. So it's like perfect. So it's really long. Yeah. And I don't even know how many I added to this one. I generally don't jot that down like, oh, I added this many. I just try it on. And then I usually rewrite sleeves often because I want the angle of the decreases to be what the designer intended. So I got here, tried it on, realized I probably need 6 more inches, and I went back up to like where the pink one is because these decreases get they get closer together as you get closer to the cuff. So I took those out and then decreased the same rate that the beginning of the sleeve had so that it has this nice swooping angle, which is something I really liked about it. But anyways, this is my only project. Shocking. And I think it'll probably remain my only project unless I cast on a neck accessory. I just don't feel like I did in January. Like there's nothing particularly that I really want right now, which is fine. I have a lot of knitted stuff. I have a lot of sweaters. I could use more hats. I should probably purge some hats that I don't really wear, or like ready to wear hats that I've purchased that I don't really wear. And then kind of decide like, I guess this is like it's spring. I'm not gonna wear a lot of hats too much coming up. So I could think about hats for the fall. There's a particular shape I like for being on my head. And there's a shape at the top that I like. So I need to figure that out and play around with that and knit some other designers' hats. And obviously neck accessories, like little ones, like little kerchief, little triangles would be really nice. But sometimes I think about some of the yarns, like sweater quantities that I have that I purchased for certain projects, and I'm just not into those right now. I think I'll be excited to work on something for myself maybe in a couple months, but I just don't really need anything. So I'm not gonna cast on. It's a weird thing to be in, to be like, I don't want to cast on. And somebody just posted on Instagram a story of like, did you like casting on or do you like finishing? And I was like, oh, I'm so a finisher now. And I'm gonna write a little bit more about that in kind of series form in my newsletter. So if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, go in the description box and there's a link to my Flow Desk page, which will sign you up. I have been writing like 1,500 pages, 1,500 words a day to just kind of get better and better at practicing writing so I can express my ideas a little bit better. And that will, I think, hopefully inform my newsletters will be better. My information in my podcast will be better. And eventually I'd like to put those writings into the blog so that people can refer back to them whenever they're interested, whenever they're, working on something, thinking about something that I talked about a while ago. It can be stored there. So I think it would be helpful to talk more in detail about how I got to this place of only having one project, total mindset shift. And I need to think about it more because I have kind of outlined it a little bit, but it's like, how did I really get here? And this place where I'm really okay with not starting something new. I do have a lot of other stuff, like I said, I'm trying to catch up on. I was just like, when I made a list of books that I was like partway through, it was just huge. Like, I have a dozen or so books that I need to read, and I've really been not prioritizing reading time. So I read like 6 books in the last 2 weeks, just cleaning house and finishing this one and that one and this one and that one. So there's things to do. It's just not knitting. Okay. So those are my finished objects and my one whip. And I wanted to show you my very first project. And I thought of this project because I was writing about how I used to think in my early 20s when I started knitting, because I was 18 when I knit this, that I was so behind. There were a couple people that I met early on. One gal who was Austrian who helped me knit Continental for the first time. She'd been knitting, I think, since she was 10. I had another person I worked with who was in her 50s, and she'd been knitting all of her life, and she's like really, really good. And so I came across these people who had been knitting who were older than me, who started younger than me, and it made me feel like I was behind. And I just realized now I've been knitting for 20 years, and it feels like I'm like way ahead, because a lot of people learn when they're older. So, right, I guess you could say people learn at all ages. So I went from being like, oh, I'm behind and I'm not very good, for me to be like, oh, it's been 20 years. And like, that's a lot longer than some people that I meet who just started. So it was good to realize that, like, actually, you just got to keep plugging away at it, and then you'll have decades behind you that you can talk about, which made me think of this project. This is a pair of leg warmers. Leg warmers were my in. It was what I wanted to knit, because as a tall teenager in dance class, my legs were much longer than the leg warmers that were available to purchase. And so I was all about the dancer fashion, obviously became a knitwear designer. So I really loved clothes pretty early on. And there was a dance catalog that I would get every month, and I would love looking through and wanted more leotards, more tights, just like loved dance fashion in the classroom. I didn't know like costumes so much, but I just really loved the like practice wear. And I have a favorite pair of black leggings. I probably talked about our black leg warmers with a red stripe at the top and the bottom that I've probably talked about before, that I wore all the time. I still have them. I know exactly where they are. And it's been probably 20. I probably got them when I was 12. So it's been a couple decades I've had these. Anyways, these I knit at 18 because I wanted to learn how to make leg warmers so I could make really long ones that fit my whole leg, which I never did. And someday I will, and I'll write a lovely pattern, and it'll be like so synergistic or full circle or whatever. I don't know what this yarn is. The needles and this yarn were handed to me. I think this was my sister-in-law's project. I think she was working with this yarn, and she like ripped it out and gave it to me because we were driving from Phoenix, Arizona. She wasn't my sister-in-law then. She was just my brother's friend. And we were going to Coachella. And I think this was in 2005? 2004? To Coachella. Saw Weezer, Coldplay, Bauhaus. What was that band called? A bunch of them that were, of course, really popular at the time. But it was really fun. The biggest crowd of people I've ever been in. But on the way in the car, I I knit these. And she gave me a pair of little circular needles that were bamboo. And I don't think I finished, obviously, for sure, know this, did not finish this project in the car. I think then we drove from Coachella to LA at like 4 in the morning when I caught a red eye home, and I was so tired. I was showing you my feet today. I still wear them every once in a while when I like want to wear flip-flops and yet it's cold or something, or I'm wearing wool socks but I need extra warmth on my feet. I would love to incorporate leg warmers like into my week, like more daily wardrobe. I just forget. I have a few pairs that I've knit. Let's look at the fun non-woven in ends that are just like hanging out. As I remember being really confused as like, how do you get them to stay in? The ends just never stayed in because I didn't know how to about duplicate stitch, or really how to like pull an end like this into like the column of knit stitches here. I kind of want to leave it too. Like I could weave them in now, but it's such a story, so I can't really. Anyways, I still wear them, which is funny, and I think they're great. I think I did a pretty good job. They're definitely felted. Anyways, I want to know in the comments if you remember your first project and if you still have it. I definitely knit other things that were not good. It was easy to knit for some reason. This is a great project. I think the next scarf I made was terrible. So I don't know what happened. Or if I'm remembering them out of order and this isn't the first one, but this has got to be the first one because I really distinctly remember being in the car with them, my brother and Angela, and her giving me this to work on. And that was not the first time I had knit. I tried to learn when I was 12 from a German woman who used to live down the street from us because I wanted to make leg warmers at 12. This is like really early on desire to make leg warmers. But it's hard. And I could have gone back to her house and sat with her, but I don't think I was quite old enough to like feel comfortable doing that. So then it took another 6 years and my sister-in-law doing it too. We'd be like, oh yeah, I want to learn how to do that. And I still want to make the same thing. And here we are 20 years later. The last thing I want to mention is the newsletter that I just sent out this afternoon about dry measuring your knits before you block them, because I happen to be wearing a sweater that I just recently finished and that I did measure before I blocked it because it's the perfect size for me and I didn't want it to stretch. I didn't want it to lengthen or widen. And this is the Felix by Savory Knitting, Amy Christoffers. This is the first time I've knit the pullover version, but I've knit a couple cardigans and it's a really great pattern, very easy, very fun. But I did an Instagram video of me laying it out and measuring it. Key part for me makes this easy is that I drew a sketch first. So like a bad drawing sketch makes it sound like, ooh, fancy. I just have over the years from drawing outlines of sweaters for design ideas and stuff, kind of can do one together. Look how wide I made the neckline. So not in proportion. But I do that and then I throw in as many details as, I put the details of the little chevrons and the ribbing detail just for fun. But I then write down all the measurements I take while it's laying out dry. And I write them down next to those spots, like a schematic that you would see in the pattern itself. I make a schematic of my actual finished dry sweater. And then I put it in the water, and then I get the mats ready, get the pins, get my measuring tape. I have one of these, which I don't use for measuring gauge, but I do use it to measure my own body and to measure bigger sections of finished pieces. And then take the sweater out, roll up in the towel, squeeze out all the water I can, and then when I lay it on the blocking mats, then I put this right next door. And I am looking, as I put the sweater in place, I'm looking at this schematic and going, okay, how wide is the yoke or the raglan? How wide is the neck in the back? How wide is it in the front? How big is the bicep? How long is the sleeve? How long is the body? How wide is the body? Wide was the rib? Like, as many measurements as I have patience for, which is the advice I wrote about my newsletter. As much as you have patience for, as much that would be applicable to you, specifically things you're concerned about stretching out or being too small. So if you want actually to expand something when you block, you probably can within certain, range. You can't manipulate knit fabric too much, but you can do some. And having this sitting there, sometimes this is so helpful to be able to see it. I don't have to remember, oh, well, it was 18, the body was 18 flat across before I blocked it. So what is it now? Like, that's usually what I do with the measuring tape. I'm like, well, what is it now that it's like laying here, like sort of flat? I haven't like pressed it down yet, but it's like sort of flat. What is it coming out to now? Sometimes it expands quite a lot, and I'm like, oh, no, come back. And I'll squish it together and then pin it so that it doesn't dry in this expanded state. It actually dries in the shape that I want. And sometimes that doesn't mean it retracts, but sometimes it does. It really depends on your the wool you've chosen, whether or not it'll come back from being overstretched in the water. One of the things that people say when you take a wet garment out of your sink or out of your blocking tub is to not like distort it with squeezing, like being too rough with it, or like rolling it in the burrito and maybe not standing on it, because it might pull it apart more. All those things could come into play. But I was going to say, sometimes on the piece of paper, I will write out, if I want to make an adjustment to what the sweater is, I will note down, I want the bust to be 2 inches wider. So make sure to do that. I want it to be 20 instead of 18. That's really helpful too if I make those decisions beforehand, because when you get the wet garment and you're on the floor, it's kind of uncomfortable and you're there for a really long time, and you might make decisions that might do things in a, like, I don't care kind of attitude. I just want this over with. So if I'm going to change anything, I try to write it down. So that's been really, really helpful, because it gets me sweaters that either stay the same size, pre and post blocking, or allows me to more like thoughtfully change something about the sweater. That's what I wrote about them in my newsletter. Like I said, you can subscribe below. I'm going to write a little bit more about blocking. I did create the Google, what's it called? It's a survey, online survey, Google form. That's what it is. You can go into Google if you don't know this. You want to like gather information, or you want to send out a survey, or you want to have a sign up form for something. Google has a really great, easy, you just type in Google Forms and you can sign up for free. It allowed me to, like, I had all these questions I'd come up with about, like, how do people feel about blocking, and what's their blocking experience, and like, what are people really struggling with? Because I can make assumptions with those questions, but I really don't have any answers. So if you are struggling with blocking, or you really like blocking, or you want to talk about it more, you can go into, well, I'll put the link to the survey down below, but it's in my profile on Instagram too. So you can like write a lot if you want to answer questions about blocking, so I can talk about it more and like address maybe specific things that you've experienced. I've only been doing it for 20 years, so I don't know everything, but I do love getting feedback and hearing about what other people have experienced and expanding on my knowledge in that way. And then I can share that with other people. So it's sort of like help me help others by filling out that survey. I wanted to see if I could figure out the Google form, and it was really easy. And so I just made this survey very, very low key. And I don't necessarily know if I'll do anything with the results besides just write about it more and hopefully help demystify blocking for people. I find it really fun. It's the part at the end where your knits just look really good. This looked good beforehand, but it just looks more cohesive. All the stitches are like nice and tidy. This yarn from Peace Fleece really bloomed lovely in a lovely way. So I enjoy the blocking process. I like my knits to look nice and my stitches to look pretty and for it to fit well. And it's just like a way to like get the garment to like relax. It's if we bought ready-made garments that never got washed, they would just be like from the making process, and things just need to be like when you make a sewn garment, you iron your fabric first so it lays flat and natural, as opposed to how it's been folded in the store or on the roll, whatever that big those rolls are. I don't know what they're called because I don't sew. But imagine if we just like sewed up a garment without having the fabric nice and smooth, you probably wouldn't do a great job sewing it up and probably would be wrinkly. So I guess that's another way of saying it. You block so that your knit is no longer wrinkly. But it's a process that I found difficult at first and just went at it from my usual approach of like, how can I make this easier and more enjoyable for myself? One of the ways is by making a schematic like this and dry measuring beforehand, so that I don't have accidents where a sweater fits great and then it's huge, or something is too small and I just always going to be too small because I didn't block it and I didn't adjust certain things. And sometimes if I get a neckline that's like really too much, I can take it in the if I know what I measured when I didn't like it, and after blocking I can just go and then pin and be like, okay. And that's worked and been successful for me a lot of the time. So okay, that's it. I hope to be back later this month with something else to show you. I guess another sleeve and a little bit more of the body. And I'll probably pull out some more older projects. So stay tuned and thanks for watching. Bye.